Hello everyone, welcome back to classes. How are you all? I hope you all are doing very well. All are good. So, have you watched the last session which we have discussed till now, students? So, if you remember that in the last two sessions we have discussed about respiration, that what's the whole process about the respiration. Then we have seen that what's the difference between the respiration and the breathing process. Then what we have studied, students. So, we have seen the mechanism of breathing, the function of diaphragm, that how the diaphragm works, and then we have seen the respiratory system as well of human beings, that how the respiratory system works, that how the which organs, body organs involved in the respiration process. So that's all thing we have already discussed till now. Now students, today we are going to see that how the respiration take place in the another other animals, like human beings. Okay, we have seen the respiratory system, but all of the organisms, like all of the animals, are not having the lungs for their respiration process. So how they respire? Because student, for their for doing work or for like for survival, everyone has to respire. Okay, it's not just that only human being has to respire, but the other animals also has to respire. Okay, so for them we are having different organs which we are going to study in today's session. And in the last, then we'll see that how the plants respire. Fine. So that means the respiration in plants, how the respiration process is going on plant. As we know this thing, plants are also a living thing only. So how they respire, how they are surviving, how they are preparing food. So we are going to discuss all such thing in today's session. Fine. So we'll just see that what are the topics we are going to cover up in today's class. So it's just that breathing in other animals, we'll see that how the other animals breathe. Breathing underwater, that how they, like some of the animals, student, if you have noticed, so they breathe underwater, like aquatic animals we call them, the animals which lives underwater, so we call them as aquatic animals. Aquatic animals. So how they breathe, so we'll see that part, that how the organs are involved in breathing. Because if I ask you that when you are swimming, like while swimming, so will you be able to breathe inside the water? So you'll say that no ma'am, I can't breathe. Because student, we human beings, or the lungs which we are having, they are having the ability to breathe in the free oxygen. Because in the water we are having dissolved oxygen, so we are not capable to breathe in the dissolved oxygen. We require free oxygen which is present in our atmosphere. That is why when we swim, so we, like after some time, or even though when we are going to very depth, so it's just that we carry oxygen cylinder with us. Exactly. So that's a student, we are going to see that how the aquatic animals breathe. Then we'll see the respiration in plants. So these three topics we are going to cover up in today's class, and they are very easy, so just be relax and try to understand the concepts. So students, now starting with the very first thing, that how the other animals breathe. Fine. So breathing in other animals, so like human being, student, like as we breathe, like we respire, like during respiration process there is the release of energy, and that energy we use for doing a different work. And for that we are having whole respiratory system. If you remember that we have discussed that first it is the nasal cavity, from where the exchange of gases take place. Then it passes through the pharynx, and then to the trachea. From trachea to it goes to bronchi, bronchi to bronchioles, then bronchioles to alveoli, and those are having the capillaries of blood, exactly like a kind of network, you can say. And from there the oxygen get dissolved into the blood, and the blood transport oxygen to all over the body, and that's how we respire. And oxygen is used up by the cells to break down the food molecules and release energy. Fine. And that energy is used up by human beings so that we can do our different work. Similarly, student, if you have noticed, it's not only that we human beings respire, but animals also breathe, and even though plants also breathe. So that's how, student, we are going to see that how animals breathe. So it's just that we know this thing, that the breathing and respiration, these are the two different things, but we can say that yes, breathing is a part of the respiration. Respiration is a whole process, and breathing is just a small part of it. But if breathing is not there, so respiration is not possible. Like whole process is not possible, because breathing is the process of inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide. Okay, so students, what happened that, okay, some of the organisms are having lungs in their chest cavity which helps them to breathe, but some of the animals are not having lungs, so they are having any other organs, or they are having some any other way to get to inhale or exhale gases so that they can also survive. So because students, it's not like that only we human beings or animals which are having lungs, they can survive through respiration. We are having many animals which do not have lungs, and it's just that they are having other organs present there for the respiration process, and or the other way to get respire. Oh, fine, so that they can also survive. Exactly. So we can see here few organisms have lungs in their chest cavity, which helps them to breathe. The organism like earthworms and a few unicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms, students, what happened if I'll tell you? See, as I've told you that cells. So cell, if you talk about, so these are the building block of our body. Okay, building blocks of our body. Fine. Now, student, what happened? We are having we can say two type of organisms. If generally, if I'll tell you, so one is the unicellular, and the another one is the multicellular. That means, student, the organism which has only one cell, like there is only one cell, so we call them as the unicellular organism, and the body or the structure of the organism which is made up by the multicellular, like many cells are involved in it, so we call them as multicellular. So that's how, student, we are discussing right now that okay, like human beings are multicellular, animals are also we are not unicellular, we are multicellular, because we are having, so like the we are having cells. I can't even tell you that how many cells are present in our body. Fine, because they are very large in number, because due to those repetition of the cells we are getting whole body structure. Similarly, students, the organisms which just contain only one cell, so they also respire, but they don't have any specialized organ for breathing. They just use their body surface to breathe. Fine. So that's how, student, we are going to see that how the different animals or the organisms respire if they are not having lungs. That means other organs are involved in it. So what are those organs? And the other type of organisms like unicellular, so how they are breathing through their body surface. Fine, students, I hope you got this point that yes, it's not like for now what we have come to know, that okay, human beings also breathe, but it's not like that only human beings are breathing. Animals and plants also require respiration process, so that they can breathe and they can survive and they can also do their work. But it's just that, student, that few organisms like human beings and the other living organisms, they have lungs in their chest cavity which helps them to breathe. As we have seen, student, in the respiratory system, like we are having lungs, and inside those lung, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli are present, and one diaphragm is there, and because of that, the contraction and relaxation, the volume of lung increase and decrease, and that's how we inhale and exhale oxygen and carbon dioxide, and that's how the whole respiration process takes place inside our body. But imagine if other animals, like other living organisms which do not contain lungs, so how they are respiring? So they are having different organs involved in this process, and we are having some other organisms also which do not contain any specified breathing organ. So that's how they just breathe through their surface, like body surface, because their body are having pores, and through that pores there is the exchange of the gases. So we are going to see that part, student. Fine. So if you see here that okay, the question is like fine, we have seen that okay, different parts are there, but if we see that breathing underwater, fine, that we know this thing that okay, now other living organisms are like every organisms are having different breathing organs. If you can see here that for the spider it is book lung, for chicken it is lung, but if you see here, student, for the sponge, they just respire through their surface, inflow and the outflow. Caterpillars are having spiracles. Fish are having gills for respiration process. So that's a, student, every animals, like depending upon their body structure, depending upon the area where they are living, they are having different organs to breathe. But the question comes here, student, that okay, the animals or living organisms which live on land, so they are having the oxygen in the atmosphere, but the organisms which lives under the water, so how they are breathing, that how they are getting oxygen. So students, it's just that the animals which live in water, that are called as the aquatic animals, as you can see here, they have special features which enable them to breathe in water. Like all other animals, aquatic animals need oxygen to breathe, because every animal, for their survival, they require oxygen to breathe. They obtain oxygen dissolved in water, that the water, as I have told you, that we human beings are not able to breathe in that you can say that water, because what happened na? Like if we breathe in water, so the water will also going inside our lungs and we can't survive because of that. Okay, but the animals which are living under the water, they are having this ability that they can you can say they can obtain oxygen from the which is dissolved in the water. Fine. So lungs are good for the terrestrial organisms. That means the organism which lives on land. So lungs are good for them, but for purely aquatic organisms, they are not very useful. Because what happens, student, if you remember that in the lung part, what we have seen that there is a space, and if you're breathing and along that breath, water is going inside your body, so that lungs will fill with water, and that's how you will be facing many problems. You can't breathe properly, and there will be no inhalation and exhalation process will not be proper, and that's how you will feel suffocation, and it could be leading to the death as well. So that's a student, lungs are good for the terrestrial organisms. That means the organisms which lives on earth, but the animals which are purely aquatic in nature, because we are having some of the animals which lives on land and the water both, like frogs. But the animals which are purely aquatic organisms, that they just live in water, like fishes, whales and sharks, so they just live in water, so they are not very useful, that the lungs are not very useful for the breathing process, and for them we are having gills, and gills perform different function. Because of that, they are taking oxygen from the water only. So that's the whole point, student. Like, if I give you one brief about it, that okay, only human beings are not having the ability to breathe. They are like, it's not just that only human beings require the oxygen to survive. Even though other animals, whether they are living on land or water, or the animals which live on both, so it's not like that they do not survive, like they do not require oxygen for their survival. They also need to survive, and they also need breathing process so that they can survive properly. And that's how, student, they have different organs depending upon their body structure, depending upon the area where they are living. And just as we have seen that the aquatic organisms which lives in water only, so lungs are not useful for them for the breathing purpose. That's how they contain different organ for it. Fine. So we'll see some video for that, and I hope you will be getting more idea about it. Okay, so I'm having one video here, so just look at here.
Breathing in animals. In this module, you will learn how different types of animals breathe. Sid has returned home after playing with his friends. He is breathing so heavily. It looks like he ran home immediately after playing. For breathing, as you already know, we all need air. Air enters inside our body through the nose. It then reaches the lungs with the help of windpipe that connects the nose to the lungs. Inside the lungs, there are numerous blood vessels. Through these blood vessels, gaseous exchange takes place between the lungs and blood. The oxygen moves from the lungs into the blood, while the blood releases carbon dioxide into the lungs. This carbon dioxide then moves from the lungs to the nose and then out of the body. Like human beings, all mammals such as cat, cow, and dog breathe with the help of their lungs.
So students, like, depending upon the type of animals, like the mammals, okay, mammals, if we talk about mammals, so they are having lungs for the breathing process. Fine. And as we have already seen that the respiratory system is there, and they function very well, and that's how we are breathing and we are surviving. Exactly, students. And we have already discussed this respiratory system in the last session, that okay, nose, then it goes like the air passes through the nose to the pharynx, then to the trachea, that is the windpipe. Through that windpipe, it goes to the lungs, and the lungs are having alveoli, which covered with the network of the blood capillaries, and there the exchange of the gas take place, and that's how the oxygen get dissolved in our body, like with the help of the blood. Fine. And that's how, student, cat, dogs, these are all the mammals which like you can say they are just you can say the type of the human being, because they are having the same respiratory system, they are having lungs to breathe, because they live on land only, they can't live in water as well. Like the air, if you say that any cat or dog can survive underwater, no, because they also survive on the earth only. So that's how they are having lungs to breathe. But now if we see for the other animals, so how they breathe, so just look at here.
Apart from mammals, reptiles and birds also breathe through their lungs. However, there are a number of animals that do not have lungs. They have some other organ for breathing. Let us look at the breathing organs in aquatic animals. Look at a fish. Since a fish lives in water, it has to take in oxygen that is dissolved in water. It has special organs called gills that help it to do that. Water enters inside the body of the fish through its mouth. When this water passes through the gills, the exchange of gas takes place between gills and water. The gills take in oxygen dissolved in water and release carbon dioxide. Like fish, tadpoles, prawns, and oysters also breathe through gills.
So students, as we have seen that organisms which are living under the water, so they are having one special organ that we called as gills, and when through their mouth they use like water goes inside, so from that water they exchange the gases between the water and the gills, and that's how the aquatic organisms survive by the exchange of the gases, and they are also getting oxygen which is dissolved in the water. But as we human beings, we don't have gills for that purpose. That is why we can't survive underwater. Exactly. So that's how when we go with to the very depth, or we do different kind of adventures, if you have seen water adventures, so we carry one oxygen cylinder with us so that we can breathe from it. Fine, because we can't breathe in the dissolved oxygen. So the if we are breathing in the underwater, so that means water is also undergoing our body, and lungs are not having any capability so that the water can they can survive with water. Fine. So only aquatic animals are having the gills, that is called as the special organ, which helps them to breathe inside the water or underwater. That means they help them to take oxygen which is dissolved in the water. Fine, students.
Now, let's look at the breathing organ of an amphibian. A frog is an amphibian. It lives both on land and in water. On land, it breathes through lungs, whereas in water, it breathes through its skin. Next, let us learn about breathing organs of insects.
See, students, you can you imagine that we are having variety, like depending upon the situation we are having varieties. For example, amphibians, frog is there which lives on land and in water both. So it is having two options, that when it is on the land, so it can breathe through their lungs, and if they are underwater, so they can breathe through their skin. But you can imagine that like God has given different what we can say characteristic to each and every one, so that they can survive on this land, whether they are living on land or on water or on both. So that's how we are having different varieties, and that's how you can see mammals breathe through their lungs, aquatic animals are having gills. Now we have seen like frogs which can live on both land and underwater. So on land they are breathing with the help of lungs, and in water they are using their skin for the exchange of gases. Fine, now we are going to see cockroaches, that how cockroaches breathe. Fine, that's interesting, na?
Insects. Insects have small holes on the sides of their body called spiracles. These spiracles are connected to a network of air tubes that reach to all the parts of their body. Air enters inside an insect's body through the spiracles and reaches to all parts of the body with the help of this network. Different body parts take in this oxygen and release carbon dioxide that moves out of the body through the same path.
So students, now the insects. So insects are having spiracles. That means some small holes are there, and from there the exchange of gases take place. Okay, so they are having spiracles.
Now, there are some other animals that do not have special body parts for breathing. Instead, they breathe through their skin. For example, an earthworm. Earthworms absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide directly through their thin and moist skin. Let's recap. Mammals, birds, and reptiles breathe through their lungs. Animals like fish and tadpoles breathe through their gills. Insects breathe through their spiracles. Amphibians like frogs breathe through their lungs on land and skin in water. An earthworm breathes through its moist and thin skin.
So students, like depending upon the condition of animals, like where they are living, how the body structure they are having. So some of the organisms like earthworm, they don't have any special organ to breathe, so they just use their skin for the survival, for the exchange of the gases, so that they can breathe and they can also respire, and that's how they are also doing their work. Because earthworm, or like you can like if you have heard this thing, that the earthworms are the friends of farmer, because they help in increasing the fertility of the land. So that's how, student, we have seen that okay, as human beings also breathe, but the animals also breathe, but they are having some special organ depending upon the condition where they live. For example, if animals are living on the land, so they are having lungs for the breathing purpose, like mammals, reptiles, and we have seen cat, dogs, all such animals. But if the animals living under the water, that is the aquatic animals like fishes, so they just breathe through the gills, because gills are having the ability to take oxygen which is dissolved in the water, whereas we human beings can't, because we don't have gills. Okay. Then we have seen amphibians like frogs, which can live on land and water both. So on land they use the lungs, and for the water they use their skin for the exchange of gases. Fine. Then we have seen that okay, insects we are having. So insects are having spiracles, and through that spiracles exchange of gases take place. Then we have seen that okay, we are having some of the organisms, living organisms, which do not contain any special organ. So they use just like we have seen that they use just those holes. So, oh sorry, they just use their moist skin, so that the exchange of gas can take place. So that's how, student, every living organism, whether it is the human beings or the animals, so they all are breathing, but it's just that they are having difference in their body, like we can say breathing organ, sorry. So that's how, student, we have seen that okay, animals also breathe, but exactly, student, as animals, human beings, we are living things, so is same similarly plants are also living things. So living, so you can imagine that for their survival, for their functioning, so they also need to breathe, and how they breathe, so we'll see that part here. Okay. So let's see how plant breathes, but before that we have completed that how the organisms breathe and how the organisms breathe underwater. Fine. So now coming to the point, that respiration in plants, that how the respiration takes place in plants. So student, as we know this thing, that plants are also living things, and they also need oxygen to respire, and in the process they are giving out carbon dioxide. And what happens, student, that plants also generate glucose molecule through respiration, through photosynthesis process actually. And it's just that, student, we know this thing, that yes, plants do photosynthesis, they are autotrophs in nature. That means they prepare their own food, and also they produce food for us also. That means they are the producer in nature. But how they are respiring, so we'll see that part, and for that I'm having one video again here. So I'll just show you that video. Okay. Because from that video many doubts are going to be clear. Fine. So just look at here. Give me a second, students. Okay, maybe there is some problem in playing this video. So let me check for it. Maybe now it will play. Yeah.
Hi, Spiky. How was your camping trip to the forest last week?
It was great. We learned a lot about plants. I didn't know plants were similar to humans in some ways.
What do you mean?
Did you know that plants breathe as well?
Of course, plants breathe. All living things, including plants, need oxygen to exist.
Exactly, students. Not only human beings and animals, but also plants require oxygen so that they can survive, so that they can breathe, they can perform their function, and how they are performing. So we are going to see that thing here. Okay.
I don't understand. I thought that plants only need carbon dioxide and photosynthesis so they can make their own food and release oxygen in the process.
See, students, like we have discussed the thing, okay, for their breathing, for their survival, they also require oxygen. But if you have noticed that plants do one process that we called as the photosynthesis process, and that photosynthesis process is called, like, it is a type of process in which they prepare food. And for the preparation of the food, student, we had this thing that, okay, plants take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and they release oxygen, and along that oxygen they release glucose as well, and from that glucose they get the energy to do their work. That means, student, we have only seen that thing that, okay, plants take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and they require water and sunlight so that they can perform their function, perform photosynthesis process, and they can produce glucose and oxygen. But now here we are talking about that, okay, for their respiration, for their breathing process, plants also require oxygen. But how they are getting that oxygen, so we are now going to discuss that part. Okay.
That is correct. However, after making glucose, they need oxygen to help release energy from that glucose. This process of releasing energy is called respiration.
That means, students, the oxygen which we are getting from the photosynthesis process, that oxygen is required by the plant so that they can release the energy from the glucose and they can also perform their functions. Because plants is also do their functional, like they have to prepare food for themselves and for us as well, and then they need to grow, they need to maintain themselves. So that is also the thing for, like you can say, important for them. So that's how they are using that oxygen. That means oxygen is also required by the plant so that they can produce energy, and this whole process is called as the respiration process. And that oxygen we are getting from the photosynthesis process, which is done by the plants in the daytime, students, because in daytime they are getting sunlight, and by absorbing that sunlight, students, what happened that in the presence of carbon dioxide and water, the plants produce food and release oxygen. And that's how we say that we should plant more and more tree, because in the daytime they release oxygen. Okay, but that oxygen is also used up by the plant so that they can produce energy, and this process is called as the respiration process. Fine, so just look at here.
But when do they get time to do this?
Let's take a closer look at the entire cycle of energy production in plants, from the beginning to the end, so that you can see for yourself. In the presence of sunlight, carbon dioxide and water react to form glucose and release oxygen. This happens during the day. The glucose is transported by phloem vessels from the leaf to different parts of the plant. When these parts need energy, respiration takes place, and the glucose is broken down by oxygen. This reaction releases carbon dioxide and water. The energy is stored in special molecules called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP molecules.
These are the energy storage, student, because what happened that, okay, during the photosynthesis process, that means in the daytime when the sunlight is there, because in the nighttime we don't get any sunlight, exactly. So the photosynthesis process takes place in the presence of sunlight. So when the plants getting sunlight and carbon dioxide and water is there, so they produce glucose and oxygen. Then this glucose is transferred to the different part of the plants. But now when they require energy, so what they will do, then in the presence of the oxygen, that glucose will break down into the energy, and that energy is stored in the molecule that we called as the adenosine triphosphate, that is the ATP. And this breakdown of the glucose in the presence of oxygen to release energy, that we called as respiration process. Fine, students, now we'll see. And this process takes place in the daytime and in the nighttime. This is the daytime process, and the respiration is the nighttime process. It's the nighttime process. Fine, student. So that's how in the daytime we see that the plants take carbon dioxide and release oxygen, and in the nighttime plants take oxygen and release carbon dioxide. Fine, for their respiration.
ATP provides energy directly to all the plant cells.
Oh, so oxygen is important for plants as well.
Yes, oxygen is essential in a lot of reactions. Here's a fun fact. Any reaction that occurs because of oxygen is known as oxidation. Respiration is an important example of oxidation.
So together, photosynthesis and respiration help plants live.
Yes, the relationship between photosynthesis and respiration in a plant is very important. Let's explore this relationship by going back to your camping trip when you were sleeping under a tree at night. As there isn't any sunlight, photosynthesis cannot take place in the tree. Only respiration takes place. So oxygen is absorbed from the atmosphere while carbon dioxide is released. Now let's fast forward to a few hours later when there's dim sunlight to brighten the early morning sky. At this time, both photosynthesis and respiration are taking place in the.
So, student, it's not only that respiration is the mainly only night time. That okay, in the daytime also they do both of the process, but in the night time they do only the respiration process. Fine. So it's a both type, like daytime and the night time as well. Fine.
Leaves of the tree. The oxygen produced by photosynthesis is being used for respiration, and in turn, the carbon dioxide produced by respiration is being used for photosynthesis. As a result, no exchange of gases occurs between the leaves and the environment. The photosynthesis rate is equal to the respiration rate. Now at noon, when the light is bright, the rate of photosynthesis is very fast. So a large amount of carbon dioxide.
Because students, what happened, like in the very early morning there is very dim light, so in that condition respiration and photosynthesis is taking place at the same rate. But when in the daytime, like in the mid of the day, when there is the bright sunlight, that means the sunlight is you can say that the plants are getting more amount of sunlight. Because of that, photosynthesis will be faster in nature. Fine. So and when the photosynthesis is faster in nature, so you can see here
oxide is being used. The carbon dioxide produced by respiration is not enough, so the leaves take in carbon dioxide from the environment. There's more than enough oxygen for respiration, so extra oxygen is released back into the atmosphere.
Oh, I understand the importance of the relationship now. Without respiration and photosynthesis in plants, we wouldn't have any oxygen or food to stay alive.
Exactly. Let's now summarize what we've learned. Phloem vessels transport glucose from the leaves to different parts of the plant.
So these are the vessels, phloem vessels. Like students, in human beings, we are having alveoli, and over that there is the capillaries of blood where the exchange of the gases take place, and that's how oxygen get dissolved on in our body. Like oxygen is traveling to every part of our body. Exactly, student. And that oxygen is used up by the cells so that it can break down the food molecules and can produce energy. Similarly, student, plants also need oxygen so that there is the breakdown of the glucose and they can produce energy. And the glucose is traveled through the phloem vessels to the every part of the plant cell. Okay.
Glucose is broken down by oxygen to release energy, carbon dioxide, and water in a process known as respiration. This energy is supplied to plant cells by adenosine triphosphate molecules. Photosynthesis takes place only during daytime, while respiration takes place all the time.
So students, we have talked about respiration. So we have seen that in the respiration in plants it's a full-time process. But yes, in the mid of the day, photosynthesis is having higher rate because in that time they are getting more of the sunlight, and in that the case they require more of the carbon dioxide, so they will take that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and also release the oxygen in the atmosphere. So this is the respiration and photosynthesis process which has been done by the plants, and both the processes are in like very important for their survival. And it's just that from the photosynthesis we get the food as well, so that is also important for us. Fine. So that's how, student, we have seen in this session that how the other animals breathe, that they are having special organs. Some of them are not even having special organs. so they use their skin to breathe. But for the plants, we have seen that respiration depends on photosynthesis and photosynthesis depends on respiration. So we can say that both are interrelated to each other, because in the photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water producing the oxygen, and in the respiration, that oxygen is used up to break down the glucose, so that there is the production of energy, and that's how that is called, this process is the respiration in plants. Fine, students. Now we are going to see some of the questions here. During photosynthesis, solar energy. So solar energy, that means the energy which we are getting from the sun, that is the sunlight. So solar energy is converted into chemical energy. Solar energy is converted into mechanical energy. Chemical energy is converted into mechanical energy, or bioenergy is converted into chemical energy. So students, in photosynthesis, what we have seen that the plants, in the presence of the sunlight, so the carbon dioxide and water, so when there is the sunlight, okay, and chlorophyll, that is the student, this is the pigment which is present in the plant leaves. So they produce oxygen and glucose, and then you can see here, student, that this is the energy, and then it is used for the release of energy. Exactly. And then in return they release carbon dioxide as well. So you can see here that this is the sunlight, that is the solar energy, is converting into the chemical energy, because this is what, this is the chemical reaction. So we can say that during photosynthesis, solar energy is converted into the chemical energy. So option A is correct answer. Now, the raw materials for the photosynthesis are like the materials which we require for the photosynthesis. So we have discussed that one, it is the sunlight which we require for the photosynthesis, then it is carbon dioxide, and it is water. So these three are the raw materials which we require for the photosynthesis. So we can see here option A is carbon dioxide, option B is carbon dioxide, oxygen and hydrogen. Exactly not. Nitrogen, no. Oxygen in water, no, because oxygen is getting produced in photosynthesis, but it is not the raw material for photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide is required for photosynthesis, because when carbon dioxide reacts with water in the presence of sunlight, so we get oxygen plus glucose. So that's how, student, these two are the raw materials. So option A is the correct answer. Fine. Then the end product of the photosynthesis are, so students, in the photosynthesis we get glucose plus oxygen. And students, if you remember that glucose is what? It is a type of the carbohydrate. It is a type of carbohydrates. So that's how, student, we can see here that it is a kind of monosaccharide. It is a monosaccharide, and monosaccharides are the type of carbohydrates only. So that's how we can say the end product of the photosynthesis are carbohydrates and oxygen. Carbohydrates and hydrogen, carbohydrates and water vapors, exactly not, because we get only glucose and oxygen in the end of the photosynthesis, and then these two are used up for the respiration process. So we can see here, student, that option A is the correct answer for this question. Fine. So, students, we have discussed all of the questions and we have discussed all of the topics of today's session. Now, what I want from you, just watch this session carefully, because this session contains lots of information, not only about human beings, but about other animals and the plants as well, that how they respire, how they produce food, how they getting the energy. Okay. So, just watch this session carefully. And, student, what the thing is that after watching the video, if you are having any doubt, any question is there, you can put your question on public or private forum of askIITians, and you will be getting the answer from expert side. And it's just that we left with very small part of this chapter, which we are going to continue in the upcoming session. Till then, study well, watch all of the session, clear all your doubts, and thank you for watching the video. Keep learning from askIITians. Thank you.